All right. Thanks, Milo. The format for this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcement, a coffee and snack break, and our main speaker. Our first speaker for tonight is James.
Hello, my name's James. I'm an alcoholic. I appreciate the format that you just get right to it, so I don't have to sit there in anxiety. And I always think the first 30 seconds is the hardest of this because I realize I missed my opportunity to run out the door, and now I'm actually here, and I don't know. I'm gonna do the best I can. So, my name's James, and I just really want to look good. I really want to look good right now, and that's what my brain is telling me. That's what I was thinking about as I was driving over here. I picked out this outfit. It probably took me about 40 minutes, but I tried to make it look like it only took me 3 minutes. So it's that perfect little ratio of, well, he cares, but he didn't care too much. You know what I mean? So I have to start out with some honesty. I got to try to humble myself. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we're going to get right to it, and I'm going to dig in the mud just a tiny bit. I spent a year in jail. Now, let me, clean that up a little bit. It was only drug-related charges. I never stole anything that I got caught for. And that's, so I got to make sure I spin that a little bit and make it look a little bit better. Maybe if the laws were better, less time, probably would have gotten sober sooner, something like that. What else? I mean, look, if we're going to dig in the mud, I put myself in compromising situations. I can remember one time I was in a park, I was homeless. I could see the bathroom at the top of the hill. It's right there. But I don't know if anyone could relate to the feeling of constipation and when that feeling hits you and you just can't make it. And I had to do what I had to do in the middle of the park. And I remember an older woman, walking over the hill and looking at me and just turning around and walking away. And that's a humiliating experience that I put myself through among many, many others because of the decisions that I made in thinking I'm not an alcoholic, I can do what I want to do, I will figure this out, I got this. I'm sure you hear a lot of AA all-stars come up here and share their stories and tell you about everything they're doing in AA. Alex, you are an AA all-star, and I mean that. I'm not being funny or anything like that. I look up to you, girl. You're amazing. I am not one of those people, and I'm not saying that to be I'm the cool guy. I don't do everything in AA, and I'm still sober. I say that as a cautionary tale to maybe one other person in this room. Maybe the rest of you don't need to hear this, but maybe there's one person in this room that might understand that. I've been sober for 6.5 years. I spent 3 years in a live-in treatment center, and things were great. I had people on my butt, waking me up 6:30 every day. I was going to a meeting every day. These people told me what to do. I didn't really have a choice. I spent the first year there. After that year, I'm going to stay here. So I started working there. I interned there. I ended up going to school. I ended up getting a full scholarship to USC. I'm going to tell you that because I want to look good, right? I got a full scholarship to USC. It's pretty awesome. Anyways, I end up going to school, and I'm 3.5 years sober at this point. And I started to have this feeling I don't need to be here. Why do I need to be here? Look at my life. I've graduated with honors from one of the top schools in the nation. Look how far I've come. From the guy who kept his mail in a bag and couldn't open any of it to someone who's got a job, got a degree, looking like this, just completely changed his life around, right? And my feeling became, I don't need to be here. I don't need to do this. And, I said that, are we okay? Okay. I said that I have 6.5 years sober, so obviously I didn't end up drinking. I still have my physical sobriety. But the reason that I'm telling you this is because I lost my mental sobriety. I lost my spirituality. I lost my happiness. I lost my ability to look people in the eye, let them know what was really going on inside of me. And I didn't lose it, I gave it away. 5 minutes. How we doing, Alex? We're good? Okay. I gave it away. That was my decision that I did. I gave that away. And man, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing to come up here and say, AA gave me all of these things, following these directions gave me all of these things, and I decided I didn't need it. I decided I was different. I used my drunkalog to separate myself from you guys. I used my education to separate myself from you guys. I used the way I looked. I used where I lived. I used everything I could to separate myself from this program, to separate myself from my friends, to separate myself from the people who cared about me. And it took me to a dark spot. And that was my decision that I did that. Look, it's depressing to wake up sometimes and think, I got to do this for the rest of my life. For me, it's depressing sometimes to think I need help from a higher power that maybe I can't see, or even after 7 years, my relationship with maybe isn't that great. Maybe it's not as good as some of these people here that look like they have a great relationship with their God. Why can't I figure that out? Why can't I get it? It's hard. This program is not easy. And look, when I say I'm not an all-star AA member, the decisions that I made were mine. But, the 12 and 12 tells us the key is willingness. And that door is always open and available for you. You can open it anytime you want. If you're in this room, you can look to your left, you can look to your right. There's people who care about you. There's people who think that you're worthy. There's people who think that I'm worthy, even though I may not think that about myself sometimes. You're loved. If you're in this room, you're loved. And I know I'm talking at you, but I'm saying that for myself too, because I need to remind myself of that sometimes, because I can forget. I know, I started with some gnarly stuff that I did in my life, and maybe some of you can't relate. Our literature says that we're trying to raise the bottom for some people. There's some young people in this room, and I share those things because I came from a good family. I had a lot of opportunities, and I still went to those depths in my disease. I don't share it to try to look cool. I don't share it to try to gross anyone out. I'm sharing it because maybe there's someone in this room who hasn't gone to that level yet. I hope it's a lot of you, and maybe you can hear that and hear. Maybe that will help you to make a decision to be all in with this program just for today. Just for today, try to be all in. Just for today, try to call someone or text someone who maybe needs help before you go to sleep. Maybe try to say a prayer tonight before you go to sleep. Something like that. Alex, thank you. I adore you. You're a great friend. She's going to come up here and kill it. But I think I'm done. Minute's good. Save your minute. All right. Take care.
God, grant me this serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now our main speaker will share his or her experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Alex.
All right, hair check. James is not the only one. I care about what other people think about me too. It's all good. I'm an alcoholic and my name's Alex W. because we're going to be recording. Normally I would put the last name in there, but and that's just because that's the way that I've been taught. But I'm tired. I don't not want to be here. I'm just tired. Took a 2-hour nap with my dog. She woke me up, and I was like, all right, let's get ready. Let's have a cup of coffee, and let's do this. And when James said I was an AA All-Star, all I thought about was, I'm not an AA All-Star. I just have a type A personality, and Alcoholics Anonymous loves that. And I love to be busy, and Alcoholics Anonymous has a little bit of everything for everyone. And when I got here, I had a lot of really great teachers who came into my life and saw that in me. They were like, this is a very active young lady. Let's make sure she stays busy. And I've never stopped being busy. And one of the beauties, I will say, of getting sober when you're really young, when I was 17, is that you get to grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous and stay in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous if you choose. And a lot of really ups and downs with that, and a lot of positives. There's really no negatives because everything is useful. But as a result, I grew up learning about the steps. I grew up learning about the traditions. I grew up learning about the 12 concepts for world service. I grew up learning about conferences and hotel contracts. I learned about unity, and I learned about putting myself aside so that the group may exist. I learned about putting my personality to the side so that it doesn't override the entire room, because I can definitely do that. I can be AA asshole too, and I could be the first one to say it. And as a result of getting here and being so inquisitive, AA was kind of like my college, and it was my high school. And I studied every single book that was out there. AA Comes of Age, Our Great Responsibility, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. I read every single story in the back of the book. And I did that because I was just so curious. You know, this was like level 1, level 2, level 3, you know, every year. And I was thinking the other day on my way here, I was like, how do people quote the big book? Like, I was just curious about that in my own life. And I'm like, the reason, at least in my experience, in my opinion, or my knowledge and my experience based around that is because people are constantly in the book with people. And you can tell where they end because they kind of stop being able to quote past how it works. And that's not my experience, but it's always nice to see that because that means that people are active, they're engaged, they're constantly trying to work with new people. And that's what this whole thing is about. And I was up at 6 a.m. and I was doing some stuff for AA, and it was an incredible day, and I would do it again. And I was excited and I was thrilled, and God put a position in my life that I just have had the best time of my life. You know, it's been the absolute honor and a privilege to serve Alcoholics Anonymous in the ways in which God has allowed me to. But especially today, I was thinking about this on my ride over here. I was talking to this man named Joel. We were having lunch together. We were having kava. Shout out, it's great. And actually, funny thought about that. He said, "Do you want kava for lunch?" And I was like, "Oh man," because I have had friends drink kava, and they've called that a relapse. Whatever your preference is none of my business. But 2 of my best friends have relapsed on kava. And I was like, ooh, are we about to relapse together? And then he said, no, Alex, the food. And I said, oh, okay. So then we have lunch. And we have lunch, and we're sharing a meal, and we're talking. And he was a Class B trustee, and all that really means he's been very busy for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, what did you do when you were done doing all the service that you were doing? Because that is my greatest fear. And he said, and you're never done, but when I finished that term, I went back and I did the things that I loved. And I was like, well, what did you love? And he said, I loved being in plays. And so as a result of being in plays at the age of 40, I went back to school and I got a master's degree in that. And I started doing adult plays, and I started having fun and being in the middle of that. And then he turned the question around on me and he said, Alex, what do you love? What are your hobbies? What are the things that give you joy and give you solace and give you like just a reason to get up in the morning? And I was like, man, you know, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, my joy was dancing on a bar and shaking my tits and my butt and wearing like really hoochie stuff and having guys like give me shots and doing body shots and doing jello shots. And my goal and ambition in life, if I could make it to 18 years old, was to be a bartender. Like that was it. That was my goal. That was my hobby. My hobby was beer pong. My hobby was being able to do a keg stand for a minute. My hobby was going shot for shot with the boys. Like those were my hobbies. And as I looked at him, I said, I love hiking. You know, my friends and I are training right now to try to hike Half Dome. We're going to go on a hike tomorrow. I try to go every weekend. I love going to concerts. We just came back from hearing John Mayer. Fucking amazing. And he deserves the F too. And I love going to movies. And last week I went by myself and saw Air and I loved it. It was amazing. And I absolutely love taking my dog on a walk. And I love traveling. I'm going to Puerto Rico in a month with my mom. I'm going to Arizona, to Texas for work. I'm going to Iceland at the end of the year with my mom again. And I have a million trips in between planned, you know? And all of those hobbies, if you can read between the lines and the correlation between all of those, they're all my opportunity to experience God. You know, when I go hiking, I'm pushing my body and I get to go experience God's world because it's not like man-made. It's not built. It's something that God put on this earth for us to experience. When I go to a movie, I get to see people that God gave that gift of cinematic, being able to do that. I mean, I have no idea how they can create that, and it's absolutely amazing. And I get to go see that on a live screen, and it's like a meditation for me. And I absolutely love traveling because I love to see the world that God created for us. You know, unfortunately, the things we've done to it, I don't know, but it's still amazing. And I love my dog because all she wants is time with me. And she's always happy no matter what it is. Even if it's like I was out all day and as soon as I saw her, she's jumping on top of me. She's licking me. She is the best dog ever. I fucking love her. And God gave her to me, you know, for me to come back to him. And I forgot my other hobbies, but those are the ones I remember. And I looked at him and I said, if only I had more time to do them, you know, and I take out as much time as I can to experience all of that. And I share that with you guys all today because Alcoholics Anonymous for me is far more than just reading the book with another girl. It's more than just showing up at meetings for 1 hour every week and going to fellowship after or before. It's more than my general service commitments that sometimes feel like I want to pull my hair out and no one cares, you know? It's more than calling my sponsor a couple times a week. It's more than a nightly inventory, and it's far more than the morning meditation that I do every day. You know, it's more than that. It's about what do I do? How am I packing into the stream of life, you know? There is, in the original manuscript, there's the last step, and it says, we try to carry this message, especially to alcoholics. And what that has always translated to me, or it's been my experience based on the people that have taught me, is that my job is not just to keep this here. My job is to bring it into my family, into my occupation, into the things that I do, into the things that I love, and especially to normies, you know. And I love the opportunity, quote on that, you know, like the big line there, to have that, you know. What an opportunity to have a second chance at life. When I got here, I was 17 years old, and much like James over here, I wasn't shitting in parks, but I was shitting in my bed and sleeping in it, which is kind of gross, and peeing in my bed and sleeping in that, and vomiting on the side and letting that sit there for a while, you know, and in my car too. I used to do that. And because I used to be driving and then get sick and then drive, and I just had to get to the party so I can get drunk that night or keep going. And what I love about Alcoholics Anonymous is that there is a story for everybody. And in There Is a Solution, they say, and I'm going to butcher this, and I don't really care, but it says something to the extent of like, the stories in the back of the book have been designed so that you can relate to the experiences of these people and their way back to God. And so my story tonight is just that, because the solution is quite simple, and it always has been for a girl like me. That my sponsor's job is to put my hand in the hand of God, her job is to put my hand in the hand of God. Her job is to put, I don't know why that's not coming out correctly. Her job is to put my hand in the hand of God's, and that's it. And the way that we got there was by working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the way that I work them and the way that I work them with the girls that I sponsor today is by reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, word by word, line by line, paragraph by paragraph. And along the way, my sponsor would stop and she'd ask me questions. And along the way, she would relate to me and we would dissect it and we would cry and we would laugh and we would cry some more and we would laugh some more. And along the way, I started to comprehend what I was up against. And I always think about that too, like, why have I remained in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous this whole time? Like, why isn't my experience ever leaving? And I attribute it to 2 experiences, and that's it. I'm not special. I don't pride myself on being an AA All-Star. I don't think I am at all. I fail miserably all the time. I'm very, very, very human. The other day, not the other day, this is a year ago or 2 years ago, I lied about getting a Postmates order so I can get the refund on it, like not AA behavior. And I don't recommend that you do that. And I remember sitting on that and then texting my sponsor and telling her, and she said, well, maybe get 2 orders next time and make it right, And I was like, all right, from the same place. And that's a little something. But anywho, the 2 experiences that happened to me that I'm quite sure that maybe not a lot of people can relate to is that I went to a treatment center. I started drinking when I was 13 years old. Very quickly, it became pretty alcoholic. And alcoholic to me means that I'm obsessing about it. Everything I do revolves around how do I get alcohol. When you're really young, it's really hard. And along the way, I was also my bottom was high, but my bottom was low. I was drinking whatever I could, whether that was Svedka. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Whether that was Smirnoff Lime, the vodka, the big bottle, Ciroc. I don't know if you guys drink that still. And I used to drink the Smirnoff Ices, which were never fun, but I would always down that with the vodka and 100 proof, and which was always the best. And like Blue Label and Black Label, because that was my dad's stuff. And that's where I started, and I started drinking. And within 4 years, I was a girl that was waking up and thinking about drinking. Everything I did revolved around drinking. The people I hung out with revolved around drinking. My best friends were a girl named Alex S., and another girl named Alex L. And Alex S. was my alcoholic best friend who we'd wake up at 9 a.m. and start drinking vodka and then start creating our plans. And my other best friend was Alex L. And Alex L. was a normie, and she did not understand the reasons and the way that I drank, and she didn't get it. And Alex L. was my safe haven, and she was my grounding piece, and she was also my detection of how bad it was getting for me, because she'd often say stuff to me like, Alex, why do you drink like that? Alex, why can't you stop? Alex, how did we get to the college campus and you just went missing for 4 days? Where were you, And I was like, oh, I was off doing this and that with him and that. And yeah, I don't even know where I was either, and that's how it was. And I had no care or concern about anyone in my vicinity. When I arrived at a party, I went missing because I usually found the guy that I knew would hang out with me all night to get me drunk and do whatever else I wanted. And that usually came along with other things. But mainly the goal was always, how do I get drunk? How do I get drunk quickly? And how do I keep getting drunk all night? Because obviously it's going to wear off and I need to make sure that I have unlimited access to alcohol. And the crazy, funny, baffling feature about alcoholism is that if I knew I couldn't get wasted that night, I just wouldn't drink. And I love that part in the big book that they talk about. It doesn't matter how long you drink or how much you drink. It just matters that you relate to the phenomenon of craving. And for me, that relates to, I would get this anxiety, overwhelming feeling of I need to drink and you just don't understand. And really it related to I would do anything. And I could always measure where the alcohol was in the room, whether that was a cigarette in a beer bottle, whether that was washed back vodka, whether that was your vodka, wherever it was, I could always manage to find it and drink it because I just had to have it. And the funny thing about the whole situation is you have no idea that it's happening to you. And that's the baffling feature about alcoholism for me, is that my entire life and my entire world revolves around alcohol without my permission and without my knowledge at all. And the only way that I came out of that was because I lost all my friends. I was my senior year. It was the worst year of my life. All my friends had gone to college. And, oh my God, it was awful. It was awful. And I remember texting my mom and being like, I just want to die. And I was like, I'm going to do it today. I'm going to go to the bathroom in the school and I'm going to just hang myself. I was just, the depression that had overcome me because alcohol had stopped working. And that is the scariest place for a girl like me to be, is that alcohol was my solution. It was the thing that made me feel a part of. It was the thing that I forgot about all the reasons why I hated myself, or all the reasons why you hated me, or all the things that I had done, or all the ways in which I would separate myself from you. Alcohol took that away. Alcohol did for me what I couldn't do for myself. Alcohol allowed me to love you. Alcohol allowed me to love myself. Alcohol allowed me to be present. Alcohol did for me things that no person could ever give me. And so Alcoholics Anonymous says there has to be a sufficient substitute. And what is that going to be? And I didn't know what that was going to be. And it was a scary place for me in the fall of 2012. And so God, in all his grace and all his glory, knew how to get my attention. And so you can imagine a girl who used to be pretty cool, pretty popular, hanging out with all the people, no longer invited to the parties, no longer somebody that people wanted to be around, no longer with the 5 boyfriends. In fact, we're down to 0, no longer with the friends, no longer. In fact, it was like if you were with me, you weren't allowed to go into the party. I had to like sneak in to get the alcohol. And that's where I was, and it was crazy from being at this I had arrived place to this I have no solution place in a matter of 2 years. From I had arrived, and when I say I had arrived, I mean I remember feeling like on top of the world. Like I had alcohol in my hand, I had some other stuff in my other hand, I had a couple of guys, I was going to all the parties, I was invited everywhere, I was doing pretty decent in school. It was amazing. Alcohol is amazing. If I could be drinking right now, I would be. That's why I'm an alcoholic, And I used to do everything with alcohol, and it was manageable until it wasn't, until I crossed this line. And I do remember vividly when that happened. I do remember the point in which I no longer had the choice or the control over when I was going to black out or not. And I remember that shift because it used to be this brownout. It used to be I could have a couple of drinks and I knew when to stop. And then all of a sudden I had crossed this line and there was no stopping. And there was no wherewithal to stop either. And so nonetheless, God knew how to get my attention. And I was deathly scared of sitting alone at the lunch table. Deathly scared. I mean, that was one of my biggest fears, to be in high school. It's like that movie, you do not want to be the girl alone at the lunch table. And that was something that I was in genuine fear of. And there's like a line, and again, I'm going to butcher that, but it's like, when you're placed in a position where what you're about to lose is far greater than what you currently have, that's when you're ready to make a decision, something like that. And that's what I was faced with. I was invited to a New Year's Eve party. All the people were going to be there. And I was like, oh my God, this is my redemption card. And I had convinced all my friends because I had done all this therapy, right? We do this therapy. We make promises. We tell people we've changed. We cut our hair. We change our style. We change everything on the outside to convince people that we've changed on the inside. And we even believe that for ourselves, or at least I did. I don't know if you're anything like me. And I thought that if I had gone to therapy, and I thought that if I knew what was going on, and I thought that if I had something that was enough for me to want to change, right? Like a hard drinker has a sufficient reason to stop or change or moderate. And I had that. And that was, I'm going to sit at school on Monday if I don't get my shit together, and I'm going to be sitting by myself. So I better act like a lady tonight at this party. And I cannot get wasted. There's no way. And so I went into this party. I made a decision. I was like, I'm not going to get wasted. It's not going to happen tonight. I'm going to tally my arm. I'm going to have this much vodka. I'm going to drive my car to ensure that I don't get wasted, even though I love driving drunk. Anyway, it's one of my favorite hobbies, and without a license. And anyways, and I put people in my car, and I was like, I'm safety first, right? And I'm the drunk driver and whatever. And sure enough, what happened? 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm waking up on a toilet. Someone's banging on the door. Get out of the bathroom. What are you doing in there? And I'm coming to, and I'm baffled. I am absolutely and utterly baffled. I couldn't understand why when I didn't want to black out, I blacked out. Why when I wanted to have a couple, I couldn't. Why when I wanted to moderate, it wasn't possible. Why when I just wanted to enjoy myself, it always led to me blacking out or browning out or getting to a place of absolute oblivion, but certainly to a place where I had no comprehension of what had happened or how it happened. And that was scary enough for me to make a decision 3 days later to put myself in a treatment center, not to get sober because I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I also didn't know what one was, but because I had problems with other substances. And it's really easy for me to identify as an addict because it's socially unacceptable to do drugs every day. And it was in my town. And so I was like, I'm going to go to this treatment center because I have a problem with the stuff. definitely not an alcoholic, definitely know how to drink. If only people would give me an opportunity to show them, like, then I would be fine. And so I go into this treatment center, and I say this really, if there's any Al-Anons in the room, but I say this because there's a couple of things that happened in my story that are very different, that had they happened any differently, I wouldn't be here today. Number one, I put myself in that treatment center. My mom had nothing to do with it. No one told me to go. No one told me to get sober. No one said, you're an alcoholic. You should go get help. No one said, hey, the way that you're drinking is a problem. People just said, you're doing this to yourself and you have no idea that you're doing this to yourself. And I started to experience the same consequences over and over and over again, losing friends. My liver was shutting down. I weighed 88 pounds soaking wet. I was shitting blood. The consequences of not knowing where my car was, people yelling at me, my phone constantly being cracked. I don't know if anyone can relate to that. Not knowing how it happened, losing cars, losing time, and most importantly, not being able to look myself in the mirror because I didn't know what I was looking at anymore. And so I put myself in this treatment center, and in 26 days, God did something for me. And I didn't go in there thinking, I'm never going to drink again. I went in there thinking, I know I'm going to drink again, and so I need some help to figure out how I don't drink again. And that was step one for me. You know, my sponsor said something to me. She said, do you think you're going to drink again? And how you answer this question is going to determine the trajectory of the entire rest of your life and your sobriety. And I looked at her with all sincerity and zero reservation. And I said, absolutely. So please fucking help me. And I was 17 years old, and I was in the middle of my senior year in high school. And I got sober in South Florida, and no one cared that I was in high school. No one cared about my feelings. People didn't care that I was darker than them. They didn't care about my religious background. They just cared about if I had desire to stop drinking and if I was willing to go to any lengths, and I was. And while I was in there, the obsession to drink was so loud that it was all consuming, and I couldn't hear anything. And I could say I was an addict. I was like, Alex, addict, you know, Alex, addict. And I was running around, but alcoholic, not me, can't identify, can't relate. And I went to this meeting, and this lady talked about having a really simple life. She said she was a dog walker. She was in school to be a vet. She was 3 years sober, and she was engaged to the love of her life. And what I heard in that message was this lady went from having absolutely nothing, like James had talked about, from shitting in the middle of a park to being in prison for a year, many stories like that, to just having a life. And that is what I held on to. And I don't care about the extra stuff. My sponsor often talks to me about removing the attachments of this world, because when we die, none of it comes with us. And who gets to arrive to God when you arrive at God's door, if you believe in that? And what type of person arrives? And when God says, or whatever's out there or whatever's meant to happen, but I always like to envision this for myself so that I can check my character, is when I arrive at God's door and I wake up from this nightmare. No, I'm kidding. When I wake up from this dream, and God says, and God has this little list of all the things that he had asked me to do, I want to know that I've checked them off. I want to know that I did a decent job. And so her story was enough for me to hold on to, because it was simple. It was so simple that it was like, okay, like, how do I do that? And it's crazy to me that I thought that something like that was so simple. And so, and mainly what I heard was that this chick had a relationship with something greater than herself. Today, I choose to call that God. And that her entire world revolved around that relationship. And every decision she made, everything she did in her life was measured by how it was going to affect her relationship with God. And if that was going to allow her to be of maximum service to those about her. And I was like sold. And I remember walking home, and there's always a guy, right? There's always somebody in your life that will influence you. God knows how to get your attention. And for me, it's always been men. And so while I was in this treatment center, this guy named Ryan, I couldn't say I was an alcoholic. He said, just say you're an alcoholic. And for 2 weeks, I wanted to jump out of this van. And I'm telling, like, every time it stopped, I was like, should I jump now? Should I go run to the gas station, go get some beer, go convince somebody? And they used to like scare us. I don't know if they do that to you guys. They would scare us and say, like, if you get to the wrong corner, you'll end up a trafficked little girl, and you're pretty cute, so be careful. And I mean, that scared me enough to stay in the van. But every day, I mean, my mind would be like very loud. And so I remember walking home, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And I was walking home with Ryan, and he just started saying this to me over and over and over again. Just say you're an alcoholic. Just say you're an alcoholic. And I remember looking at him, and I said, my name is Alex, and I'm an alcoholic, and the obsession to drink was lifted, and it hasn't come back since. And I experienced a white light experience, and as a result, I've remained here. And later on, he told me to go to this meeting, and it was Cheer Up at 10:13, and it was my very first home group. And today my home group is, I have a theme, I guess. It's Tuesday night, 8 p.m., Shut Up and Crosstalk. And I went to this meeting, and I remember walking into this meeting as a newcomer, and they always know that you're new. It's kind of crazy, but they do know. And I looked cute, and I had like a really proper outfit on, and let me back it up. When I got out of there, and this is important for me to share. When I got out of there, I thought that you had to go to a halfway house and that there was no way that you could stay sober if you didn't go to a halfway house or a sober living. I genuinely thought that. And I remember yelling at my mom and screaming at her, like, you didn't set me up for success. Like, how am I supposed to stay sober? Like, what do I do? Just freaking out because here I am, like, I need to stay sober. Like, it's become very apparently clear that I'm an alcoholic and I'm going to die if I don't do this. And my mom is crying. My mom's from Puerto Rico. We're from an island. My entire family lives on an island. No one's an alcoholic. My mom doesn't know anything. And also the adolescent halfway house was backed up for 6 months, there was no way. And so I was like, what do I do? And I was like, we're going to a meeting, Mother. And my mom takes me to a meeting, and it was the Triangle Club, and it was a Wednesday night or Tuesday night. And we walk into this meeting, and at the end of the meeting, we all sit in a circle, and we said the Lord's Prayer. My mom's a very Catholic woman. And I remember she looked over at me, and she looked over at the people in the room, and I could tell that she was giving me over to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I knew that she knew that there was nothing more for her to do other than make sure that if I needed to get a ride to get there, that she would take me. I knew that she knew not to get in the middle of my sobriety, and she never has. I knew that she knew that there was a lot for me to do and that I had to do it on my own, and that I couldn't have somebody telling me what to do and how to do it and holding me accountable. That couldn't be my mom. And I remember she said, my only ask is that you bring pepper spray at every meeting that you go to because I'm deathly scared. And she said it in Spanish, so I knew she was serious. And I still have the pepper spray, and that is still our thing. And I just don't bring it to meetings anymore. And anyways, and so the next night I went to a meeting, and it was this women's meeting. And before that meeting, I called up Intergroup because I had done all the things they told me to do, and I was deathly scared. I was like, oh my God, what do I do? I have too much time on my hands. And I talked to this man on Intergroup, and he talked to me for over an hour. And for 1 hour, I don't know anything that he said I don't remember, other than he talked me off the ledge. And he didn't care that I was a woman. And that was my first experience that men with men, women with women is a man-made idea. I've never been taught that way. I've been taught if you can be of service to somebody that you should be. And that has been my experience, that I'm grateful that no one ever said, you're too young, you're a girl, I can't help you. And also I forgot to mention, we'll get to that. But anyways, and so I went to a meeting that night, and I lost my dad at 15. He died of cancer, and I almost didn't go and see him pass away at the hospital because I was too drunk and too consumed in self. And my sister got pregnant at 18 and had a kid. And I'm from an island, and my family, my immediate family moved to Florida. And so that was very hard and challenging for me because my entire family only speaks Spanish, and everyone was primarily of a different background and speaking English, and it was really uncomfortable. And so I knew just like life was hard is the point. And I knew that there was going to be lots of life in this life. And I wanted to know that you could stay sober through anything. And so I remember that night at this meeting, this lady shared about having breast cancer and working with her sponsees and not knowing if she was going to make it to the end of the year. But all she knew was that her primary purpose was to carry the message to the people that God put in her life. And I remember thinking like, wow, like talk about any lengths. And then the next night it was Cheer Up at 10:13, and I went, and I was new. And here are a couple of things that happened to me that I still do today because as a result of those people taking selfless acts, I'm sober. Somebody approached me when we were approached by whom the problem had been solved. And solved means not that we don't suffer from alcoholism, but that we're recovered alcoholics today because we don't suffer from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body that they talk about in the foreword to the first edition. I am not cured. They say that very, very, very clearly. But what I do have is daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my program. And part of that program looks like when we approach those whom the problem has not been solved. And so this lady named Claudia came up to me and she said, hey, are you new? And I was like, yeah, can you tell? And she said, let me introduce you to some people. And she introduced me to Leah, who was my first friend. And Leah did something for me that I don't often see and I hope to see more of. And she said, hey, why don't you sit next to me? I have a seat saved. And I was nervous and I was shaking and I was scared, right? This is a fucking weird ass room of people who are extremely judgmental. They look good. They kind of don't look good. You don't know what's going on. You don't know anything, and you're scared and you're alone and you're by yourself. And all you need is someone to be kind. And so she was. And she allowed me to sit next to her. And I remember sitting in that room that night and the feeling that overcame me, which was camaraderie, joyousness. And the Big Book talks about it's a feeling that you must not miss. And that is in relation to a newcomer. But for me that night, it's always been in relation to the feeling of being at a real meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's nothing like it. It is God in real time. It is God manifesting itself in the old timers and the new timers, in the laughter, in the coffee, in the line to the coffee pot, in the greeting, in the literature, in the recordings, and all the things that are happening in order for this to happen. And so I sat there that night and I remember thinking, I want to be a part of this, just in my head. And there was a little voice, and today I know that as a God whisper, at least for me, it's not schizophrenia. And the little whisper said, if you keep showing up, you will be. And then the next day, a lady texted me and she said, hey, have you started going through the 12 steps yet? And I said, no. And she said, do you want to? And I said, yes. And she said, great, meet me at my house Thursday nights. We're going to start going through the book line by line, paragraph by paragraph. And you'll be through the work in about 3.5 months. And when you're done, you will go out and work with others when you're done. And I didn't know that my meeting was also bidding for FICCIPA, which is the Florida Conference for Young People in Alcoholics Anonymous. And to speed that up, I didn't know that we were going to win the bid and I would be on that host committee. But God set up my entire first year for me to be here and for the manifestation to occur that has. And that lady, I never was late. I was always early. I drove an hour to her house every week. I went to a home group with her. We used to have Shabbat dinner at her house on Friday nights with all of her friends. And then Friday after that, or Shabbat dinner, then we'd have the home group, and then we'd have IOP after, and they kept me busy. And on Saturdays we had volleyball, and then we'd have a meeting, and then we'd have another meeting. And then Sundays we had a meeting at this huge hospital. And along the way, I got busy in Alcoholics Anonymous, not because I thought I was great, but because, like I said earlier, I have a type A personality. I need to be busy. I'm not a girl that does well with time on her hands. And I got really lucky, and I feel so grateful and blessed that the teachers I had in my life taught me about unity, and they taught me about being fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions, not with money, but with emotional and spiritual needs. And that it's not my job to take wherever I go, it's my job to give. And it's not my job to dump when I go places, it's my job to share a message. And I love James' message tonight because it's a warning. It's a warning of what will happen to you if you don't keep doing this. It's also a relation, like to relate, because this is not a program of perfect people. We look for spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. You know, I have extreme anxiety, and it manifests itself in me it manifests itself of me being in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous because I'm deathly scared of what happens if I'm not. I don't know what it's like to not be doing general service. I don't know what it's like to not be constantly in the book with multiple girls. I don't know what it's like to not have a sponsor. I don't know what it's like to not do inventory. I don't know what it's like to not have a relationship with God and pray and meditate. I do know what it looks like, though, to have an ego. I do know what it looks like to show up at a meeting and tell them that they're doing it wrong. I do know what it looks like to have, and I definitely did that. Did it here, actually, because you guys do it very differently in Florida and do it wrong. And anyways, and I do know what it's like to have character defects. I do know what it's like to harm people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I do know what it's like to sit in a meeting and throw a coin and be like, yep, that whole row slept with them. Because when you grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's messy. And when you grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's absolutely beautiful, and it's a journey to be on, one that I'm so grateful that I haven't missed. And my first year, it was really just about getting in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, learning what it was like learning about what I was up against, and then learning what I needed to do in order to pass this on. And I had my second sponsor come into my life, and I had surgery my first year, and and I was busy, and I got a job. I'd never worked a day in my life, but Alcoholics Anonymous taught me to show up for a job, get one, and we're the best workers ever. I used to work like 60-hour weeks like it was nothing, and I also learned how to finish stuff. And anything I did when I was not sober, I would have I had a really weird relation to. I don't know if anyone relates to that. And like I couldn't do it. Like I didn't know how to do it sober. And so AA taught me how to do it sober. It taught me how to go back to the gym and learn how to work out. They taught me how to go and finish high school because I was like deathly scared of going back to my high school. They taught me to just do it online. you know? And then they taught me about what happens after that. Go to college. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if that's for me. And then they said, there's other things that you can do and you don't have to do everything here. And that's when I started learning about, traveling, save your money, go, you know, go experience the world that God has given you because you can. Have goals and meet those goals. Have a bucket list and meet your bucket list. At this time, currently, I've done everything I've ever wanted to do, and I'm making a new one. And do I have 15 minutes left or 10? Okay, great. So I'm going to spend the last 10 minutes on a couple of really important things that always sometimes come to mind. And the first one is, I was listening to this guy named Peter Marinelli, who I love. Oh, I shouldn't have mentioned that. Okay, whatever. Anyways, Peter M. Everyone has like their speaker that they're like, oh my God, I just worship the ground they walk on. It's not good. It's not healthy, but I do love him. And I feel like God speaks through him to me. And one of the things he says is chop wood, carry water. And what that means is that we live life forward. We understand it backwards. I don't ask. I don't wonder why anymore. I've stopped. And I just do. And I don't know why things happen the way they do. I don't know. I don't understand a lot of the reasons why things are happening the way that they are. I didn't know when I got the nudge on my shoulder after I'd gone to Burning Man to move to California. I didn't know why, but I just listened. And 3 weeks later, God planted me in Manhattan Beach, and I had no idea. I'd never been here. I didn't know the girl I was living with. I had like $800 in my bank account. If I had told people that, they would have said I was crazy. But my sponsor and I are pretty in tune, and she said, it's your time to go. And all my amends had been made, and the work had been done, and the door had been closed for Florida, and it was time for me to come here. And I could tell you that in the 4 years I've been here, I've been busy. I've been very, very busy. God has kept me doing a lot of different things for a lot of different reasons, and I am so grateful for that. But right before I moved, I had 5 years sober, and my sponsor said to me, 5 years is anything you haven't been working on in the first years leading up to it, you're going to be forced and faced to work with, which is why you get your marbles back. And I was like, okay, great, you know? And I went to India for 3 months, and I was doing a mission trip, and I was living in an orphanage. And while I was there, I had this profound experience. And what that profound experience was, I couldn't understand why people were eating mud cookies in order to survive. I mean, real poverty is overseas, you know, and I couldn't understand it. And I remember having this conversation with these normies, and I said, how is God real if all of this is happening in the world? Just like Bill was contemplating and we agnostics, I actually had that real life experience. And I remember this normie said to me, God is real because of you. And then I took a step back, and I started realizing that God is real because of all of this. God is real because of the people that get sent to go do the things in which we're asked to do, if we're present enough to hear the whisper. And that has been the thing that I've been chasing this whole time over the last 10 years is the whisper. And that's my sponsor's job. Her job is to make sure that all the debris is removed in my life so that I can hear it through inventory, through a 4-step, listening to it in a 5th step, realizing the things that are separating me from you, and trying to ask God to help me either fit them into my life to use them, or to help me realize what they are so that I can, when they come up, I can do something about it or get outside help, which I have. I'm a huge fan of therapy. And go make the amends that need to be made, right? Go out and do all of them, make sure that they're done. And at this point, I have put myself in a position to make sure that all the amends have been made. I've reached out to the people that I know I needed to make amends to. Whether they've responded or were willing to hear that is a different story. But that has always been my experience, that it's my job to do the footwork and leave the results up to God. And that's in every fashion of my life. And then at 5 years, thought I was going to marry this guy. You know, we always do. And I remember feeling on fire and just lit for life. And I'm quoting the big book, and I'm sponsoring all these people, and I'm having sponsorship family meetings at my house, and my ego is just doing great, you know? And it's funny how it shows up again in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's funny how the accumulation of things, property, prestige, all of that gets in the way of my ability to be present here and my ability to see and feel and hear and understand and believe in God. And I allowed that to happen at 5 years. And I was talking to my sponsor about it on my drive home today. She's like, you're just a completely different person. I said, yeah, because you allowed everything in my life to move from my head to my heart, the longest 18 inches. And she taught me how to step back far enough to see the bigger picture. And she reminded me that knowledge and power are two different things, and that to use them as a weapon or to use them as a basis to look good, right? Or to use them as a basis to seem like I know what's going on here is defeating the entire purpose. And so I was in India, and I had this experience because I got to go to Alcoholics Anonymous there. It was really rad. And I got reminded why we did this. And I stopped going around and telling people how many people I sponsored. And I stopped telling people when I was going to be speaking at a meeting. And I stopped telling people about all the service commitments I did. And I stopped allowing my ego to drive my entire Alcoholics Anonymous experience. And I started leaving that stuff between me and God. And I stopped asking for people's opinions on things that I just really didn't care about, because on page 69, it says counsel with other people is often desirable, but let God be the final judge. And I realized that people are fallible, and people often make decisions based on fear. And fear is usually, or an opinion. And usually both of those are based because they don't have experience regarding whatever's going on, or because of their experience based on what's going on, they want to prevent you from that experience. And my experience in all of that has been that everything has had to happen in order for me to be who I am. So who am I to deprive somebody else of that? And that is often the difference between me running the show and allowing God to do his thing or her thing. And self-will is real, and God's will is too, right? Both of them exist at the same time. And often throughout my, so 5 years, my life blew up. And I got 3 minutes to tell you about that. Blew the fuck up. I'm talking like, thought I was going to go to jail because I had a warrant out for my arrest because I didn't pay a seatbelt ticket. I had this experience that I didn't know in a million years would happen to me, and it happened. And I had to make a decision that was life-changing, period. Was homeless, living with my best friend because I was living with my then boyfriend, who I thought was going to be a fiance, and it wasn't, and had to figure that out. But through the darkest places of my life, I've always emerged. And through the darkest, quote unquote, places of my life, God has always knocked on my door by having a girl standing there saying, can you please help me? Or a service commitment that's like, can you please show up? Or just an opportunity to just be and take it all in. And this whole thing has been a journey back to God. It's been this unlearning process of everything that I thought I knew, including the things I thought I knew in here. It's been this unlearning process of ego, deflation of it, also the reemergence of it, and the dance between that. It has been this understanding that why I am here, I don't know. How long I am here, I don't know. But one day I will meet God or whatever's out there. I fucking hope I do, because it's going to be rad. And when I do, I want to show up knowing that the work has been done. And there's so much work to do. And that often overwhelms me. And that's why I do a lot, because there's so much to be done. And the last two things I'll say is the reason why I do what I do in general service specifically, and it's my last plug, I have to do it, is because I got taken to this thing called an area meeting. And they said that general service is comprised of the membership of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's supposed to be a fair membership, so an equal or a fair representation of the membership of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love all our old white men, I do. But in that room that night, it was just old white men. And women, and anyways, primarily men. And I remember being 18 years old, and I remember looking across the room, and I said, so those are the people making the decisions for Alcoholics Anonymous. Those are the people that are going to decide the future for me when they're dead in about 10 years from now. And I remember somebody, well, it's true, and I'm sorry. And I was 18 at the time, and they're gone, and God bless them, and thank you for everything you've done. You've opened the door for me. But one of the things that one of those men said to me was, Alex, just like I've left this door open for you, I am giving you this baton because it is your responsibility to make sure that the future of Alcoholics Anonymous, that there is a door open for it. And there will be changes that will be made over the next 10 years that will decide the future of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you best be in the room when those decisions are made. And I remember sitting there and having that conversation that was 10 years ago, and I've never left, only because I felt at that time this overwhelming responsibility to show up on behalf of the people of my age, of my demographic, and to make sure that at least there was somebody there representing us, because there wasn't and there hasn't ever been. And so it was this going against the grain that I've always been kind of doing. Not easy, not an easy task. And I say that as an invitation, and also 2 invitations there, and I end with that, is when you hear the whisper, I hope that you respond. And sometimes we're asked to do things that are uncomfortable. Sometimes we're asked to do things that are the right thing but are the hard thing. And sometimes we're asked to just be and be silent while we're waiting for the answer. And all 3 things I have found, that is the grace of God. And this entire thing, I've experienced absolute mercy and grace from the membership of Alcoholics Anonymous for never kicking me out, for never giving me terms, for never telling me this is how you have to abide by it, and if you don't, you can go, for always allowing me to serve them, and for making sure that there was a seat here when I got here. So thank you to all you folks that were sober in 1995 when I was born, and kept those doors open for me. And I absolutely love I am in love with Alcoholics Anonymous, and my behavior hopefully reflects that. And I will spend the rest of my life, God willing and Alex willing, paying the debt that I will never be able to repay, but trying to pay it back to the best of my ability, faultingly, not as an AA All-Star, but as Alex W., alcoholic. Thank you for my life.